First up, we're going to talk about water supply rule updates, and that's going to be led by Sela.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. All right, let me just share my screen. I prepared some slides and I made them exactly how you're not supposed to make them, with lots and lots of text. So here we go. Just wanted to provide an update on the water supply rule. I provided a similar update back in March as well for the Q1 sharing session when we had submitted the first draft of the water supply rule. We are now on the third draft of the water supply rule, and we opened it up for public comment between August 8th and August 22nd. So it's no longer up for public comment. We are working through those comments, preparing a responsiveness summary, and that's all led by Ben Montrose, and we are on steps to submitting it to LCAR, which is the last step before finalizing the rules. The hope is to publish the new water supply rule in the new year. But we don't know until it goes through LCAR. But if everything goes well, hopefully first thing 2026, we'll have the updated water supply rule ready. So just some major changes that have happened. It's incorporating the federal PFAS regulation. So taking the rules that were implemented in 2024 by EPA and basically adopting them into the rule. We've added an anion exchange treatment section to the rule. We've updated the GAC treatment specs. And then we have incorporated consumer confidence report regulation by reference into the rule. It does not include any lead and copper rule improvements, if anyone was wondering. But there's just too much going on at the federal level to know exactly what's going to happen. So that was not incorporated into this draft of the water supply rule. Let's see. So just a little bit more specific about the treatment, because that might be what's most relevant to the engineers here, but feel free to ask any questions. Basically, for PFAS treatment, the biggest difference is that the current rule requires redundancy for GAC only for community water systems. The new rule will require redundancy for both public community water systems and non-transient, non-community water systems. So transient TNCs, domestic bottled water systems, at least one train of 2 GAC or AIX filters. So we're keeping the lead lag configuration, but 1 train for TNCs and bottled water and 2 trains for NTNCs and community water systems. The difference is that we are saying empty bed contact time of 10 minutes for GAC and 2 minutes for anion exchange is across the train, not per individual filters. Based on some of the data we've collected over the last year and a half from our GAC systems, we're finding that that unless there are reasons for the filters to not function properly, such as TOC, then they really can run for much, much longer with only 10 minutes in total. So we don't need the 20 minutes. And then the other thing that we have changed is we've created a section about the operation of PFAS treatment. We're basically saying unless you're doing midpoint sampling, so keep in mind the lead lag configuration. If you have a midpoint sample between the lead and lag, then you are fine. But if you don't have that midpoint sample, then we require that 1 train is running while the other train is sitting as a redundant train, so offline. And the moment there's breakthrough at entry point, you switch the valve and then you run water through the standby or the offline train. So that will be the requirement moving forward if you're not collecting a midpoint sample. That is that's sort of the very quick and dirty updates on the water supply rule. Any questions about any of that? All right, I don't see any questions.
All right, thank you, Sela.
Mhm.
If I remember right, you are also going to kick off the next agenda item. It's the drought task force. I think Julia, you might have some to contribute there as well, but I got your you're doing this one, right, Sela?
Yeah, I am. Yep, I can just continue into that one. So, okay, let me share my screen again. So I wanted to give this group here an update on the drought situation in Vermont. So basically, we have had the Vermont Drought Task Force activated for 4 weeks now. We had the 4th meeting Monday, and we are now also having not a full SEOC activation for drought in the state of Vermont, but we have an advisory committee to the drought task force meeting once a week as well now, considering the increased level of outreach there has been regarding drought in Vermont, and based on the drought monitor showing us Vermont being in either a D1 or D2 for the entire state. So what I'm showing here on this on the screen here is basically how we, the Drinking Water and Groundwater Protection Division, are collecting data on drought across the state. So since 2018, we've been asking people to submit drought reports through this tool here. And it's basically a survey where people can say, my well is completely out of water, or I have a shortage. This is the kind of well I have. It's a dug well, it's a spring, it's a drilled well, and then provide a comment section about sort of their experiences. And so we've been collecting that data in here by year, and realized I think in 2021, that people only know what they know, and if they don't know to submit these drought reports, then we might not be getting the full picture. So we also started including a question in the well driller completion reporting to say if a well was drilled due to a drought. And so on the left side of the image here, you see the wells drilled per year based on drought. So this is basically when well drillers submit a completion report saying this was a replacement well due to insufficient yield, due to drought, or a supplemental well due to drought, or a new supply well due to lack of yield. And as part of the Vermont Drought Task Force, we decided to send out a press release to start making people aware of this tool being available, as well as an opportunity for us to start understanding what is the impact of drought throughout Vermont. And so on Friday, there was a press release sent out basically asking people to go to this tool here and submit a drought report if they were experiencing any issues with their water supply. And if you look at just the 2025 numbers, we have 197 drought reports submitted. If you compare that to the number of drought reports we've collected from 2018 to 2024, that's around 100, maybe 109 reports. So we have double the amount of reports just submitted for 2025 as we have for all of 2018 through 2024. Up to 212 reports now. Yeah, okay. So it tells us a little bit, even though we know that approximately 40% of Vermonters are drinking water out of a private well. We would expect, what is that? That's 120,000 wells across the state of Vermont. This may seem like a small number of wells having impacts, but just comparing it to previous years, it tells us a little bit about the significance of the drought this year. Julia did a deeper dive into the data here and created this dashboard here. And this is specific to the drought reporter. So this is specific to the data that the public is submitting to us. And as you can see over here in this graph, this is basically showing the number of reports and how a lot of them were submitted as part of that press release being sent out. If you look at the drought monitor, and I can show you that later, but basically Vermont is in D1 primarily up here and down here, and then in D2 sort of in the center of Vermont. And New Hampshire is actually in D3 right here. So if you zoom into the Orange County next to the area of D3 in New Hampshire, we actually see that that makes up 20% of all of the drought reports submitted, which is, again, the data is used to provide to the federal agencies making these drought determinations, because different levels of drought, the drought level, so D0, D1, D2, D3, D4, will release different levels of federal funding for drought response. So all of that information is feeding into the drought response. So this here is the website that ANR has created about drought right now, and feel free to, have it available and share it with people when you hear someone talk about drought. There's the drought reporter impact, and then there's also resources for links to water hauling and also agricultural issues or other impacts. So this is sort of the go-to resource for now, and it's definitely building because the response is building in intensity based on just like the lack of rain in the forecast and the number of reports we're receiving. Any questions about the drought task force and the drought situation in Vermont? All right. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you for taking the reins on all that information. The next up on our agenda is permit audits, and Emily's going to lead us on that one.
Well, I don't have a beautiful slide to talk about this one like the last slide. Thank you for showing us that, Scylla. That was great. So we are in the process of doing a draft run through on our internal process for the auditing of the general permit. We have a checklist that we are going through as we do that process. Currently, we pulled 5 permits from the all the general permits for the water main that we've got. Those were all selected randomly, which was great to see that the process, our random process, was working, because we saw a wide range of the systems that have been using that permit and also consultants. Once that is completed, we are going to meet internally to talk about our process and see how that worked and see if there's any modifications we need to make. And probably in the next quarter session, sharing session, we will have that process nailed down so that we can formally start the auditing process next year. As part of that, on the external side, the water system and consultant will be notified from a message from me that they're being audited and what permit is being audited. And then once that is completed internally, you will receive a letter of, hey, everything's great, or hey, here are some things we need to, that we found for improvement. So that's, and there's some things that may come out of this auditing process, like some webinars, some more additional information on some things we might be seeing. So we're kind of in the early stages, but we are running through our process internally. So stay tuned for more on that at the next sharing session. Does anybody have any questions?
Right.
Great. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thank you. So now on the next on our agenda here is we're going to do a little project spotlight. I'm going to go first. I'm going to talk about Wells River, which is a project that several of us on this call have been working on. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I'll just give a the best overview I can. Um, so I'm going to share my screen and try to walk through this, hopefully quickly. So here's Wells River, Vermont. It's on the border with New Hampshire, and basically what happened in January is there was a heating oil spill in the basement of a building. I believe it was about right here in the in their basement. They had a heating oil storage tank. It was 600 gallons or so, and somehow it kind of fell apart. I had like a floor support. It was kind of like on wood in their basement, and underneath the wood in the basement was just kind of soil or an earthen you know basement. So the the tank basically fell and broke, and 600 gallons was released. And right here is actually the village's supply well. So there is a plume of fuel oil, heating oil that has migrated through the groundwater and the soil. And it looks about like this now. This is a figure from Wilcox and Barton, who's the remediation consultant on the project. And here is the supply well. And so the supply well is actually, so far, it doesn't have any detections for VOC contamination in it. And the spill happened in January, and the well actually continued to run until July, I believe it was. And the water was clean. And then now the well is actually off, and the village is trucking water up to their storage tank, which this is the access road right here, and the storage tank is over here. So normally the supply well um, pumps water up to the storage tank. So now they're trucking water, and I believe they're getting the water from New Hampshire, from Woodsville, and just bringing it up manually. And they're doing that because there is concern that, they will see contamination in the well, although they haven't yet. And if they see contamination in the well and they don't have a filter to treat it, they also don't have another source of water. Um, they have no other well. So this trucking water situation that they're doing, they can keep doing it until winter conditions hit, where they're actually not going to be able to use this access road anymore. So if they get contamination in their well, and it's wintertime and they can't truck water, then they really have no other source of water, and they would have to supply bottled water, which is a situation that we are trying to avoid. So we have been working with Wilcox and Barton. Our sites management section has been mostly working with them, and we're drinking water is working with Otter Creek to come up with a solution to provide water this winter when they can't truck water anymore. Some challenges that we're facing are that the contamination here, the most obvious thing to do would be to excavate. The problem with that, though, is it would be dangerous to the well. And the information that we have on the well, including a downhole camera survey that was conducted by Vermont Rural Water, shows us that the well is old, and its condition is deteriorating, and we view that it would be risky to excavate and install structural support sheet piling in support of the excavation. It would be risky to the well. And if you damage the well and you render it inoperable this winter, then and you can't truck water up the storage tank, then you really can't provide water. So we're trying to balance the needs for remediation and the issues with the drinking water system to try to keep this water system afloat until a new source can be found and connected, which is a process that can take, at least a year. Most people would say probably two optimistically, but it's no guarantee on when that can happen. So, so we're working with Otter Creek to they're designing a activated carbon system for the supply well. So that would if that goes ahead, then what we can do is if there's contamination in the well, then you have a carbon filter to treat the VOC contamination. Um, and and otherwise we are encouraging them though in the long term, in the intermediate and long term, to find another source. Um, but the short-term needs are certainly complicated the uh, with the single well and with the challenge of the winter conditions that are approaching. I think I probably left a lot out, but happy for anyone to chime in or ask me questions and get other conversations here going. Anybody?
Dan, can you
Yeah.
report out on what the status or actions have been about looking for a new source? Have they actually started that, initiated that process, or is it just still in discussion?
Well, I know that one thing we were trying to encourage them to do was to connect to Woodsville permanently. We wanted them to connect either temporarily or permanently with a series of distribution system upgrades. I didn't pull that map up right now, but basically, if I remember right, there is uh piping that goes along over here somewhere, and then you could basically run piping over this bridge and connect to Woodsville. And we were trying to encourage them to do that as a solution to this problem. And for a lot of reasons, some of them financial, some of them political, some of them technical with the state of the infrastructure over here, that's basically been ruled out. And we kind of have to accept that the village isn't going to go that direction. So as far as finding another well, I don't believe there's really been much actual progress on that front. Everyone is kind of aware that that's something that they need to get the ball rolling on. But for instance, I don't believe that really another site has been selected or that there's been real motion to start that process. Um, I hope I described that right. I know Julia's probably more familiar with that process than I am, but I think so I know that we sent them a letter in about a month ago where we pretty much asked them to start looking at that process more seriously this upcoming spring because our short-term concern is it's a pretty immediate issue with what to do about this winter. So um, as far as actually going through and getting a new source, it's something that I think we want to see more motion on this upcoming spring. I have some pictures from the site if anyone's curious. This is the Wilcox and Barden is running a pump and treat system. Here's the well. So let's see if I can get this right. So this is kind of moving. I guess this is probably looking about east or southeast. We got a pump and treat well here, another one right here, kind of behind this, and then here's the supply well. And they are running they're pumping it over here. I'm guessing this is some type of settling tank, and then a series of carbon filters before they discharge to storm, which I don't know if I got that picture. And this is a video that's probably certainly not going to load because that's not how technology works. So we're going to have to, oh, look at that. Awesome. So yeah, this is a residential and commercial area. I believe, I mean, this is definitely residential housing, especially on the second floor and up. And so the fuel oil that the heating oil that spilled, I mean, it was in the basement, it was for residential purposes. So these are actually residents that live here, and they are obviously concerned about what they're seeing in the backyard. They're concerned about the timeliness of the remediation. They're concerned how long this is going to go on for. There's been some complaints about access issues due to all the piping that's running through their backyard. Um, and they're certainly worried about excavation and what that would look like with all the heavy machinery and the possible damage to structures and the amount of structural support that would have to go into supporting it. But that being said, for a aggressive solution that would, some people would prefer that rather than dragging this out for years with a pump and treat and soil vapor extraction type of remediation. So there's been some village meetings where residents have said as much, and it's still undecided. We expect Wilcox and Barton to select or propose their preferred remedy for remediation within the next week. And at that point, we'll review it, and we will also weigh that along with the impacts to the drinking water supply. That's all I got. Unless there's questions. Right. The next project we're going to talk about is Killington, and Nathan's going to take that one.
I'm going to keep this short and general. I think most people on this call already know everything I'm about to say, but just to make sure, there's a new community public water system currently undergoing construction in Killington. You can see the WSID on the screen if you're interested in the details. All of the files are in the Drinking Water Public Library. This area of the state has pretty extensive PFAS contamination in private wells, public non-community systems, and I believe some community systems in the area. Waste Management is currently investigating the extent of the contamination. The goal of the system from the state's perspective is to provide PFAS-free drinking water to these users. While the system is currently undergoing construction, this picture of the storage tank, as well as this picture of the storage tank, were taken in June. However, some parts of the system, some facilities are currently undergoing permitting and design, including some distribution main and I believe a new source. The system is unique in Vermont due to its size and age. It's not often that we see a new system go in of this size, but it is worth pointing out that by EPA standards, this will be a small system until and unless it has 10,000 or more customers. It is expected to begin serving its customers sometime in the next few years.
Thanks, Nathan. Any questions? All right. Next up, we got EJCDC templates.
Yep, that would be me. So Dawn is also on the call, which is great. So one of the observations, well, first I should say thank you to the consultants for submitting their ESAs on ANR Online. We appreciate that. But one of the observations we've had lately is that the ESAs we've been receiving are in the 2020 format of EJCDC, and that unfortunately they need to be in the 2014 format for the ESAs. So I just wanted to point that out. Dawn, I don't know if you have more to say about that.
I can. I wasn't like I said. I mean, I just found out.
I saw
about
you
this
popped in
a second
today.
ago.
So.
Yeah. So this is unprepared, but I'll try to answer the question that would very rationally come up. That being, it is 2025 going on 2026. Why are we using something that old? And the reason is really devolves to manpower. We need our legal team to review any change to those documents. They reviewed 2014. We decided to start taking those, which was like in 2019, I think. Started using that exclusively as opposed to our internally created documents that had become really dated. We entertained the idea of spending the hours to have legal and construction review the 2020s last year, but then realized that a 2026 set will likely be coming out in the next 12 months. So to spend the amount of time that would take to have something that would be immediately out of date, again, seemed penny wise and pound foolish. If you find yourself as a firm that only owns the 2020 set, and I imagine there are those of you that are out there, at least as far as WID goes, you could probably reach out to us and we could help you navigate through that. I don't want to be as strict as there's absolutely no way we will take this because it's a very bureaucratic response to something that's a reasonable request. However, it will take us a while to review it, whereas we would get through a 2014 submission because all of our guidance documents are set up to modify that document. We could get through that in a reasonable amount of time. You're probably adding weeks, if not longer, to any review of the 2020 because we'll actually have to read every page because we don't know where anything is in it and we don't know what may change. If you do have a question about that, you can reach out, at least for the WID side of it, to me directly. Our web page has been pretty clear and consistent with that, though, that we've so I for better or worse, hang my hat on, we haven't changed our outward messaging. That 2014 is the one we take. So I apologize in advance to anyone who has been working feverishly on the 2020s. And I apologize that for some reason, that message isn't as widely shared as what I thought it was. A similar message should be understood for the actual contract language too, though. The documents between GCs and owners, we accept the 2013 version of that and now accept the 2018 might be the next one, but we don't have any guidance set up for it. So you're kind of on your own as to how you put in cross-cutters and the required state or federal language. Probably about all we have.
Thanks, Don. That was perfect. Patrick has a question.
I had a question, and Don, I know you and I have been emailing about these documents.
Yeah.
And someone maybe can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think on the EJCDC website I can get the 2014, and I own the 2020
that
now.
doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
Okay. So I have the 2020 and I did all the cross cutters per the WID guidance. And I'm just like, I don't have another document.
Yeah. And this didn't make its way to you because I know I'm kind of like a copy on those that's between you and Amy and maybe you and Emily. I know I'm just a CC, but I've internally noted to them that if you couldn't get a 2014, I would work with you just directly to make sure that it was fine. You were one of the ones that I knew you had bought the 2020s to work with that project. And while I don't go to the JCDC website, I don't know why they would stock 12-year-old contract language. So I think that's a pretty reasonable request, Pat, that I work with you and we'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Don. Appreciate that.
Emily, I think you got the next topic as well.
Yep. So the hydrologic evaluation that has been put out as an RFP on Vermont Buys. Just wanted to note that that is due October 3rd by 5 p.m. That's a Friday. You no longer can ask questions. There were 5 questions that came in, and they have been posted up on the Vermont Buys website, and Dan will share the link. I've given it to him in when he sends out all the information from the sharing session with the recording. And so the RFP is up there as well as those 5 questions. And if you have any issues with the Vermont Buys website, please reach out to Christopher Roberts. Thanks, Dan.
Yep. I'm going to put that link in the chat now. I hope that works. It looks a little less clean than the one that you sent.
Yeah, I'll double check.
Okay. So, and I'll, oh, that's interesting. Sorry, I'm just screwing around with the link. Yeah, I think
You
I think
gotta
it
enter a
works.
code. You gotta enter
Yeah.
whatever that dotted code is, and then
It
it'll
works.
take you right.
And
It'll
then
take you
I
right to
got
it.
I got the capture wrong, so I was all confused for a second
Yep.
there. I misread the 0. It gave me a 0 and the O and the 0, you know. Anyways, the last topic we're going to talk about is this is an idea that comes from Willie Nickerson, one of our engineers, who is not attending this call right now, but he is his idea to bring this up, and it's probably something we're going to talk about a little more regularly. Just professional groups and societies that people are involved in, anyone in this call, and any recent going-ons that anyone wants to share. One thing that Willie brought up is that, see if I can pull this up. I almost certainly lost it. That the Vermont chapter for American Society of Civil Engineers, with which Willie is a member of, is having an apple picking event at Yates Orchard on September 23rd. That is next Tuesday, 4:30 to 7 p.m. I'm sure everyone here knows plenty about Yates Orchard. It is awesome. I live 20 minutes away. It's great. So he's a member of ASC and is encouraging people, if anyone's interested, to attend. And from there, just we're just curious if anyone on this call is a member of any professional organizations or societies and wants to kind of give a plug for what they're a part of and anything that's coming up. All right, I'll take that as a sign that people here are not participating too much in professional organizations, but maybe that'll change. I will get a link to the apple picking event at Yeast Orchard and send that out for anyone interested in attending. And we will continue to kind of just bring that up and feel free to kind of get people involved in however way they want to. So I think that is it for our agenda. We also can open this up to any questions that anybody has outside of the agenda items that we've talked about so far. All right then. Well, I think we're all set here. So thank you everybody for attending. I will send out a summary email and a link with this with the recording link when we get it uploaded to YouTube. And thanks again. And until next time.
Thank you, Dan.